Here's the Usgs benchmark for Cold Mountain, placed in 1934. Very old. Hey everyone, it is Sunday, May the 6th, around 1 p.m., and I had to make a big alteration to my hike today. Originally, I planned on driving out to Great Smoky Mountains National Park again, to bag Mount Kephart, and also hike to Charlie's Bunyan, doing a big lollipop 15-mile loop, beginning with the Kephart Prong Trail. Unfortunately, as I was driving through Hickory, North Carolina, I got a flat tire, and I got AAA to change to my spare. And the fortunate thing was this happened just before 9 o'clock a.m. and a bunch of tire shops opened at 9. So I got in, I was the first one, but I decided to get all 4 tires changed because they're pretty worn. So this is turning out to be a very expensive hike. Anyways, I decided to instead drive to the Shining Rock Wilderness, where I've been a couple times already this year. This time I drove back to the Daniel Boone Scout Camp, which is the trailhead for High Top and Birdstand Mountain, which I did in February. This time I am hiking the Art Loeb Trail up to Deep Gap, and then taking the Cold Mountain Trail to the top of Cold Mountain. Cold Mountain is the northernmost point in the Shining Rock Wilderness and is famous because of the book and the movie. It also has spectacular views and is over 6,000 feet. I last hiked this, I think, back in 2012, and this is one of 2 6,000-foot summits that I've hiked before I got my GPS unit and started tracking. The other is Silo Knob, which is a bushwhack. So I figured, why not come back here, track it. It's a popular hike, it'd be good to put online. It's a pretty tough hike to do as a backup with a lot less time, because I started around 12:30, and it is roughly a 10.6 mile round trip. Most people take around 6, maybe 7 hours. I'm going to try to push it and do it in 4.5. It's basically an elevation change of 28 to 2,900 feet from the parking area to the top of the mountain, but that's over 5.3 miles, so it's not too steep, but the Art Loeb Trail is quite rocky so far, as I remember it, so hopefully I can get finished before 5 or 6 p.m. If I have time, after I do Cold Mountain, I'd like to do the quick half-mile out and back to the views from the Narrows Ridge line, but that's not a high priority on my list. So I'm not going to take too much video because I'm in a rush, but I hope you enjoyed this hike. That's the top of Cold Mountain, or at least the western fall summit. And the top is currently shrouded in clouds. I hope that changes. The forecast was supposed to be partly sunny, but also with a 30 to 40% chance of rain. So these clouds are definitely going to be intermittent all throughout the afternoon. For reference, I'm around 4,000 feet and still got about 2,000 feet of climbing to go. Very pretty trail. It's been a calm and peaceful hike so far, even though I've passed 4 distinct groups of people. The weather's clearing up for me. I have to say this is a tantalizing / annoying hike, because once after a mile you climb out of the Little East Fork Valley and you follow the northern contour of the land. Basically for the next 3 miles or so, you're just constantly getting views of your destination. Cold Mountain's up on the left, and the notch kind of in the center is Deep Gap, and it never seems like you're getting closer, mainly because the Art Loeb Trail winds into these really deep coves and doesn't climb very steeply. But I only have about 800 feet left to climb. I'm here at Deep Gap, just above 5,200 feet. It is located between Cold Mountain and Stairs Mountain, and I made it here in about an hour and 50 minutes, which is a good time. I still have a 1.4 mile climb up to Cold Mountain and approximately 750 feet to 800 feet of elevation gain. In my last segment, when I said I had 800 feet of climbing to go, I meant to Deep Gap. So I still have a nice little summit push here. I'm really glad the sun's come out and the wind is cooling me down too. Turned out to be a nice day. The Cold Mountain Trail is one of my favorite short trails. It connects this narrow ridge from the Narrows to Cold Mountain, following the south side of the summit, and just really beautiful open hardwood forest. And just above, looming 400 to 500 feet over the trail, is the near vertical south slope of Cold Mountain, which I should be at in about 15 or 20 minutes. From here, the trail is going to start veering to the left around the west side of the mountain. I brought with me the Shining Rock and Middle Prong Wilderness Area map, and I have to hold this down with my knee and foot because the wind is blowing quite strongly up here. Started at the trailhead at the Daniel Boone Boy Scout Camp and followed the Art Loeb Trail all the way up to Deep Gap, and from there I took the Cold Mountain Trail, and I'm about where the 141 is at a saddle below the summit, so I should be there shortly. I'm on the final approach to the summit of Cold Mountain, only 150 feet below the summit or less, and I'm passing through a really beautiful section of northern hardwood forest. All these bare, gnarled trees. Even though it's the second week of May, nothing has sprouted yet. One of the unusual things to me about the high peaks of the Shining Rock Wilderness is they're mostly devoid of southern Appalachian spruce fir forest, even though there are quite a few peaks above 6,000 feet. Usually in other parts of North Carolina, especially the Great Smoky Mountains and the Black Mountains, if you're above 6,000 feet, you're going to have a high density of balsam fir, Fraser fir, and red spruce. But there's only some small clusters on Stairs Mountain, Shining Rock, and on one side of Black Balsam Knob. One of the reasons is because immediately to the west are taller peaks, Richland Balsam, and then the Plot Balsam Mountains, which are above 6,200 feet. Those kind of provide a rain and cloud shadow, and the southern Appalachians forests at this elevation are heavily dependent on cloud moisture. That keeps them moist. If you go into them, everything is wet. The trees are wet, the moss is wet, the trails are always wet and slippery, and they're basically cloud forests. It's pretty cool. And because we're sort of in a rain shadow of two mountain ranges, including the Great Smokies, we don't really get that at the high peaks here. Final approach to the true summit of Cold Mountain with spectacular views on the right / south side. This is a awesome peak. I thought I would continue all the way to the eastern terminus of the trail and then turn around because there's a somewhat open view of Mount Pisgah due east. Really awesome dome / pyramidal shaped summit. Here's the Usgs benchmark for Cold Mountain, placed in 1934, very old. Cold Mountain is 6,030 feet of elevation above sea level, and I think that makes it the second tallest peak on Shining Rock Ledge, which is the massive north-south ridge line in the central Great Balsam Mountains. The view from the summit is actually not the greatest, so I'm going to keep backtracking towards the west because the rocks are a little bit more open there. This is one of many open rock outcrops along the summit trail with wide open 180-degree views of the Great Balsam Mountains. It's just past 3:30. It took me around 2 hours and 45 minutes to get up here, which is good time, but I keep comparing myself to what I did last week. The Snake Den Ridge Trail is roughly the same distance and elevation change as the Art Loeb Trail and the Cold Mountain Trail, and yet I did that around 25 minutes, 30 minutes quicker with full overnight gear. But the Art Loeb Trail is rockier, and when it gets steep, it's a lot steeper than the Snake Den Ridge Trail. So let me go out there and show you the views. From Cold Mountain, which is in the north central Great Balsam Mountains and the northern tip of Shining Rock Wilderness, you get grand panoramic views of the tallest of the Great Balsam peaks. If you look at it from above, the Great Balsam Mountains kind of look like a trident in that the largest ridges and peaks are east, and then the central spine, and west towards Richland Balsam, and the two valleys bisecting these three main ridges are the East Fork of the Pigeon River, which is down below to the left, and the West Fork of the Pigeon River down below to the southwest or the right. So looking east, we get a small glimpse of the southern edge of Pisgah Ridge with Frying Pan Mountain right here. I'm not going to zoom in, but I can see the antennas on that peak. Looking more south, this long ridge I climbed in January, that's Chestnut Ridge. It has the Old Butt Knob Trail, which leads all the way up to Shining Rock, which is straight ahead. It is kind of a half heath bald and half balsam fir summit. Way down below, kind of over this knob down there, is Deep Gap, where the Art Loeb Trail meets the Cold Mountain Trail. And this long ridge is the Narrows leading up to Stairs Mountain. In the distance here, I've basically climbed every peak in view, which is pretty cool. That's something I can say. This large, broad peak furthest south is Black Balsam Knob. And then on the right, that is Sam Knob, the double hump. Further right, the large rounded peak is Mount Hardy, and then this long ridge, Fork Ridge, or the Green Mountain, leads to Green Knob, part of the Middle Prong Wilderness. Basically everything centrally in view is part of the Middle Prong Wilderness. And this ridge right here is part of Fork Mountain, which has Birdstand Mountain and High Top, which I hiked in February. If I keep moving to the right, Reinhardt Knob is this long, wide peak. And then the tallest peak in the Great Balsam Mountains is straight ahead, Richland Balsam, which is just above 6,400 feet. Spectacular views of the Great Balsams from up here. I just finished the hike. It is around 6:15 p.m., which means it took me around 5 hours and 40 minutes with probably a 30-minute break up top. That was a little bit longer than I planned on. I was hoping for around 5 hours, but almost the entire length down, I was surprised at how steep and rocky both trails were. I guess I went up pretty quickly without noticing it, but it was very hard to go down quickly with all those rocks and roots. A lot more difficult on the downhill than most trails I've been on in the past few months. Either way, it was a great hike. Good to have a backup like this. Even though I spent hundreds of dollars on tires today and I didn't get to do my original hike, I'm glad I got to go up to Cold Mountain for the first time in 5 or 6 years. It ended up being beautiful weather, and the trail itself, the scenery, all the forests and trees, very beautiful. So I hope you enjoyed it. I'm about to go grab a beer. See you guys next time.